By 1939, Boris Karloff brought Frankenstein's monster to life 3 times. And then he walked away. But why? It wasn't money, it wasn't scandal, and it wasn't because Universal didn't want him. Karloff decided himself to hang up the monster's coat. And the reason why reveals not just how Universal's monster movies were changing, but how Karloff himself saw the monster. This is the story of how one man gave Frankenstein's monster his soul and then decided to let him go. I'm Antonia Carlotta, and this is Universally Me, the channel for all things Universal and classic horror. My family started Universal Studios, and they made the Universal monster movies, including Frankenstein. In early 1931, Boris Karloff was a struggling actor in his mid-40s with years of bit parts and thankless roles behind him. Then, James Whale cast him as the monster in Frankenstein, and everything changed. With Jack Pierce's iconic makeup, Karloff's physicality, and Whale's direction, the monster became more than a creature. Karloff's performance gave him innocence, curiosity, anger, and pain. Frankenstein's monster quickly secured a spot in the hearts and minds of almost everyone who saw him. The film was a sensation. Overnight, Karloff went from unknown actor to horror royalty. In the original Frankenstein, he's not even credited. He gets just a question mark. But by his very next film, he's so big that his name, just his last name, is on the poster as big as the movie title itself. He reprised his role in The Bride of Frankenstein in 1935, and this time he showed even greater growth, skill, and heart. The Bride was more sophisticated, more daring, more satirical, and just overall more complex. And Karloff leaned into that. Through these first 2 films, Karloff grew very connected to the monster, and he cared about him deeply. This was more than just a paycheck to him. He saw the monster as something poetic, and he saw him as a friend, and he took the responsibility of playing him very seriously. But the Hollywood landscape was changing. By the late 1930s, horror was facing a backlash. After a flood of monster movies, British censors were cracking down, and American audiences were growing more conservative. Film censorship was now being enforced. Plus, my family sold Universal, so Junior Laemmle in particular wasn't there anymore to advocate for the genre. Meanwhile, Karloff was branching out. He starred in some mysteries and crime dramas. But then in 1938, something surprising happened. An LA theater owner decided to play a double feature of Dracula and Frankenstein, and audiences went wild for it. Suddenly, horror was cool again, and Universal, ever ready to capitalize on a trend, decided to bring the monster back. And there was only one man who could play him. Enter Son of Frankenstein. Son of Frankenstein was a big deal. It starred Basil Rathbone as Baron Wolf von Frankenstein, Bela Lugosi in one of his best ever roles as Igor, and of course, Boris Karloff returning as the monster for the 3rd and final time. But there was a key difference. James Whale was no longer involved. This film was directed by Rowland, who had a very different vision. His sets were beautiful, but he didn't shoot with nearly the gravitas as Whale. And there were comedic moments, but not nearly so dark and funny as Whale's. And the monster is nothing like Whale's monster. He wasn't Whale's poetic, misunderstood creature so much as he was a hulking monster manipulated by Igor. Karloff delivered a powerful physical performance, but his character's role in the story shifted. In Son of Frankenstein, he's less of the protagonist and more of a tool for others. Behind the scenes, Boris Karloff was in his 50s, and now the makeup process, which took hours both to apply and remove, was brutal. And the costume was heavy, and the boots weighed a ton, and shooting under those hot lights could be grueling. But Karloff wasn't just tired, he was protective. So why did Boris Karloff stop playing the monster? Well, it comes down to 3 intertwined reasons. First, he felt like the character had run its course. In Frankenstein, he's born and misunderstood. In The Bride, he seeks companionship and he's rejected. And then in Son, he's just there. Karloff didn't want to play the monster just to play the monster. He wanted it to mean something. And from his perspective, the monster didn't have anything new to say. He also felt that the character was being cheapened. Karloff had so much respect for the monster. He once called it the best friend he ever had. But once Uncle Carl and Jr. left the studio, Universal's attitude towards the monsters shifted. Universal increasingly treated the monsters like pure moneymakers and nothing more. The heart was gone. They just wanted to churn out sequels and crossovers for the built-in audience, but they didn't care. And for Karloff, he could see that the monster was becoming like a gimmick or a mascot, and that didn't sit right with him. He also wanted to grow as an actor. Karloff wasn't content to be typecast forever. He loved horror, but he didn't want to only be the monster. He was already pursuing stage work, character roles, and radio appearances. If he continued to play the monster, especially as the role became shallower, it could really limit his career. It's worth noting, Karloff didn't reject the Frankenstein legacy, far from it. He continued to appear in horror, he hosted TV anthologies, and even appeared in the 1944 House of Frankenstein, though he played a mad scientist and not the monster himself. That's a key detail. Karloff didn't abandon the genre. He just chose to step away from that specific role when he could leave on his terms. After Karloff's departure, the monster lived on. Lon Chaney Jr. took over in The Ghost of Frankenstein, followed by Bela Lugosi in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and then Glenn Strange from 1944's House of Frankenstein forward. By the mid-1940s, the monster had essentially become Universal's mascot, appearing in crossover films with Dracula and the Wolfman, culminating in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein in 1948, which is a comedy classic, but also a marker of how far the character had shifted from its tragic roots. Karloff actually participated in promoting Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, but he refused to be in it. He thought the monster deserved better than being the punchline of a joke. And I really respect Karloff for this, even though I really do enjoy Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein as a movie. Because he stopped when he did, his trilogy, Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein, stands as a self-contained arc. It's the reason his version of the monster remains the definitive one. And then he went on to prove his versatility, starring in dozens of films, becoming a new beloved monster in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and remaining a horror icon until his death and beyond. Boris Karloff didn't stop playing the monster because he stopped caring, but rather because he cared too much. He gave the monster humanity, and when the movie stopped doing the same, he stepped away. Now, all of that being said, in the comments, I want you to tell me if Boris Karloff played the monster in just one more movie, which do you wish it was? Don't forget, paid members are getting bonus videos, pictures, and more. It's the best way to support Universally Me. And if you love these Universal and classic horror deep dives, make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Share this video with someone who thinks Boris Karloff's Frankenstein is the best Frankenstein. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.